linear equations. And so what I did is I gave you a handout, okay, that has the different forms of linear equations. And so the first one you should have on your sheet is the standard form of the equation of a line. And that should be nothing new because we've already looked at standard form. That should already be in your notes. Now notice that can also be called general form. Okay, so on that yellow sheet you're going to notice it can be general form. There are some characteristics. The slope in any equation written in general form is negative a over b. Okay, and the y-intercept is c over b. All right, the slope-intercept form, that's the next one we're going to look at today, and that's used when you know the slope and the y-intercept. It's y equals mx plus b. M is the slope and b is the y-intercept. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at an example. It says write an equation in slope-intercept form for the graph. So in order for us to write an equation, we need to know the slope and we need to know the y-intercept. Okay, so the first thing we're going to find is we're going to find the slope. Now to find the slope, I'm going to pick 2 points it goes through. So I've got 1 point here and 1 point where? Right here? Okay, so let's see. Let's look at our rise. Now first of all, before we look at our rise, we got to look at our tick marks. These tick marks go by every 2. Okay, so the rise is going to be up how many?
2, 4, 8.
4. Okay, the run, let's look at the run. Every tick mark goes by 2 as well, so the run will be what? 6. So the slope here will be 4 over 6, which is actually 2/3. Okay? Yeah.
Can't you, as long as they're the y and the x are the same interval between the tick marks, can't you just count it regular because that's what's going to simplify to?
You could, I just don't like you to do that because most times they're going to try and throw you off and change the tick marks around. It will if they're the same, but I don't like you to get in that habit just because if there would be a time when they're different, it's going to throw you off. If you get in that habit of always just counting boxes, it could come back to haunt you. Okay, y-intercept. What's your y-intercept? So that's where it intersects the y-axis. What is that going to be? 6. So our equation, all we're going to do is plug in. Y equals 2/3 x, because that's your slope, plus 6. And there you go. Okay, should be pretty straightforward. All right, what I want you to do now is look at this one. It says write an equation in slope-intercept form for the line described. So my slope here is 4/3 and it passes through the point 0, -4. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with the equation. Y equals, what's my slope in this problem? 4/3. X plus b. And b is my y-intercept. And so it doesn't say like my y-intercept is this. So it says I've got the point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these as x, y values and I'm going to plug those in. So I'm going to plug in y as -4 and I'm going to plug in x as 0. So here I end up getting -4 equals, what's 0 times 4/3? Plus b. So really what does b equal? -4. And some of you might have recognized that from the very beginning. It actually was written in intercept form. But my answer is just going to be this. Okay, so first thing you plug in is the slope, then you plug in the ordered pair. All right. Passes through the 2 points 0, -6, and -4, 10. So whenever we're given 2 points, the first thing we need to do is find the slope. So I want you to find the slope right now with these 2 points. When you get the answer, I want you to put it in your expression. Okay? So passes through the 2 points 0, -6, and -4, 10. So all you have to do is find the slope between those 2 points, which is something you did. Now don't write on that yellow sheet because that's going to be something if I let you use it on a test, you can't have anything written on it. Okay? So Or not. So all I want you to do is I want you to put the slope in. Okay?
Yeah, well, let me.
Okay, we need to try and be finishing up if we can. I see some of you are entering them in. Okay, so let's go and see what y'all had. Answer's actually -4. Okay, wow. We need to be doing a little better job of finding the slope here, guys. Okay? To find the slope, it's just y2 minus y1, so in this case 10 minus -6 over -4 minus 0. 10 minus -6 is 16 divided by -4, so your slope is -4. See, the problem is if you don't calculate the slope correctly, you're going to get the whole equation wrong. So that's why it's really important. You've got to get that slope correct. And so then now, on my equation, I've got y equals -4x plus b. So the question is, I've got 2 points. Which one do I plug in?
Wait, no.
It doesn't matter. You can plug either of them in. Okay, so I can plug in the 0, -6 or the -410. Doesn't matter, and I'll still get the same result. So I'm just going to plug in the 0 for the x, and I'm going to plug in the -6 for the y. I'm just going to plug the first one in. So I end up getting -6 equals 0 plus b. What does b equal? -6. So my equation will be y equals -4x minus 6. So first thing you gotta do is have the slope, and then you can plug in any point. Alrighty, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at point slope form, which is the third one down on your chart. Okay? Point slope form, and all of this stuff is already written on your sheet. So what I have up here on the board, you already have written down, so you don't need to write any of this down. You use the point slope form when you know a point and the slope. You also use it when you know 2 points. Okay, there's the equation. The line here has a slope of m, and it goes through the point x1, y1. So let's go and look at an example of this. Write an equation of the line through 6, -2 with a slope of -4. So let's go back to point slope form. This is the equation that you should have on that gold sheet that I gave you. And so now we have to figure out, where do we plug in? Okay, what do we plug in where? So what do I plug in for m? -4, right? Oops, I'm going to put a little bit more room for the negative sign. There we go. -4. Now then the question is, what goes in here? Okay, first of all, in every equation you have an x and a y for an equation of a line. So that means that my y here and my x here are going to stay right where they're at. So what I'm going to get rid of is the x1 and the y1. So the question is, which one is x, which one is y? So I look here. Which one is x? When you plug it into the formula, you always use the opposite of that number. Okay, so instead of using 6, I'm going to use -6, and I'm putting it with the x. All right, what am I going to put with the y? +2, because I'm going to do the opposite. And there you go, that's it. That's point slope form. Point slope form is actually one of the easiest forms, And it's also one of the forms that's not used as much.
That's unfortunate.
I actually like this one. We use it a lot in calculus. So let's go ahead and look at this next one. It says, write an equation of the line through 2, 3, has a slope of 1/2. So we start. Okay, first of all, what's my slope? 1/2, so that's going to go here, right? I've got my set of parentheses here. What do I always need in an equation of a line? X and Y. Okay, so those are the first things that I'm going to put in with the slope. So now I need to figure out what goes with the Y, what goes with the X. So let's start. What goes with the Y? -3. What goes with the X? -2, because remember, you're using the opposite of those numbers that you were given. And there you go. Now the beauty of point-slope form is that if you were told to answer this in slope-intercept form, all you have to do is distribute. So then I end up having y minus 3 equals 1/2 x minus, what's 1/2 times 2? 1. Okay, to put this in slope-intercept form, all I'm going to do now is add 3 to both sides. And so I end up getting y to equal 1/2 x plus 2. So it's one of those that you can move from form to form, okay, with a little bit of work. Okay, not much work. But these two are actually equivalent equations. Okay, so we've got some questions for you right now. Here you go. This is one for you to try. Which is an equation of the line that passes through -2, 7 and 3, -3? Okay, so you've got some work to do. Very first thing, what are you going to find? The slope, okay? So I want you to go ahead and find the slope. When you get your answer, I want you to enter it in on your expressions. No, now what you need to do, write your equation, so you've got y it should be on the top, 7 minus -3.
Doesn't look like it, but that was what it's good stuff.
And on the bottom, it should be minus 3.
Whoa.
Okay, I'm going to have you finish up here in about 10 to 15 seconds. B. Now, believe it or not, you really didn't have to do a whole lot of work on this problem, did you?
No.
What did you have to find and that was it?
Slope.
The slope, because if you look at this, you found your slope to be -2. Now how you should have gotten that is you should have got -3 minus 7 over 3 minus -2. So you end up getting -10 over 5, which is -2. And so our next step would have been to do this. Okay, and then plug in a point. It doesn't matter which one. I could plug in the point 7, -2 and solve that. Okay, so I end up getting 7 equals 4 plus b. So I get b to equal 3, which leads me to answer B. However, you didn't need to do all that extra work because once you found the slope of -2, the only one of these 4 that had a slope of -2 was letter B. So that's kind of one of those test-taking strategies, especially when you take the ACT. If you get to a point where you get to the -2 and you're like, I don't know what to do next, look at your answers, and your answers might be something like this, where you can answer it without finishing the problem. Okay? So like I said, that's one of those good test-taking strategies. Okay, let's look at this one. This one you're not going to be able to do that, you can see. Okay, you know what your slope's going to be. It's going to be one of 2 options. So it says, which is an equation of the line that passes through 4, -9 and 2, -4. I'll let you go on this one.
No idea. I just can't. Oh, that's.
Okay, about 10 seconds. I'll let you finish up. The answer is A. Okay. Now C and D shouldn't apply because your slope actually is -5/2. Okay. When you calculate your slope, you end up getting -9 minus -4, which is -5, divided by 4 minus 2, which is 2. Okay. So you end up having y equals -5/2 x plus b. Now I can go ahead and substitute a point in. It doesn't matter. I could substitute in the point -9, 4. Okay, so I end up getting -9 equals, in this case that should be -10 plus b. Add 10 to both sides and you get 1 to equal b, which is letter A. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and call it good for today in this section. Here's your assignment. Now we will actually continue with parallel and perpendicular lines tomorrow. Now notice it says here on number 8 through 15 you may write the equations in whatever form you choose. Okay, so that means you can do point slope form, you can do slope intercept form, doesn't matter. So despite what the directions say, 8 through 15, you can write the equations in whatever form you choose.